Are you ready to dive deep into meaningful discussions, explore personal stories, and gain practical insights that can transform your approach to mental fitness? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Real Talk Mental Fitness Podcast, where open conversation and authentic connections come together to empower your mental well-being. I'm your host, Chinazom, and I'm so excited to have you here with us today.
Hi, everyone. This is the gift that keeps on giving, your favorite podcast, Real Talk, Conversations on Mental Fitness. I'm EJ, and I have taken over again in terms of kicking off this show. Today, we have a special guest, Rekha Gibbons, aka the Generational Guru. I'm sure you've seen all of her incredible thought leadership online. She's very active, really pushing the conversation in terms of how generations show up at work and how we can build our understanding and collaborate in a more effective way. I'm not going to talk too much because I want to get into the questions, but before we do, Rehka, welcome to the show, and I would love for you to introduce yourself, please.
Thank you so much, EJ and Shinzom. I really appreciate you having me on Real Talk. I'm thrilled. I love the work that you guys do. I love the focus of the mental fitness and how you allow each of your guests to share their speciality and their differentiator. And I'm so excited to talk about generational diversity. I am the generational guru. And interestingly, I started this business a couple years ago because I was watching a television show and the host was talking about ageism, the older generations, and how they're getting such negative feedback. We were talking earlier about how Gen X kind of swallowed things down. But I heard this conversation, and full disclosure, I'm a baby boomer. I'm just on the cusp of boomer and Gen X. So that makes me a Gen Joneser, technically. And so I heard this conversation about, oh, they're old, they're outdated, they're old fashioned. And I thought, wait a minute here. You know what? Let's really frame what this is. It's not ageism. It's called life experience. And what I find so fascinating is, as I'm writing my book, I'm doing all the research into generational conflict over the years, over the ages. As early as 3,000, 4,000 years ago, during Socrates, during Seneca's time, there are written texts of the older generations complaining about how useless and how lazy younger generations are.
So this is it's nothing new. It's been happening for thousands of years, where the older ones say the younger ones are they just don't know how good they have it. They don't know how good they have it.
But the flip side to that is, just as older generations are disparaging younger generations are like, oh, you guys are so old fashioned. Oh my God. It is, I think, a rite of passage. And the way I frame it is, I think back when I was young and I was an ambitious, pretty ambitious, pushy chick. And I would see my parents or the older generations, and I would say, you know what, you guys, you're not catching it. You're not with it. You don't get the current intonations, and you're missing so much because you're old-fashioned and outdated, and you like your old ways, right? And fast forward 40, 50 years, I'm that generation.
Isn't it scary? I don't know if you ever get this, where you hear yourself, and this is when I'm shouting at my kids or something, and I'm like, oh my God, I sound like my dad. Thing in the world when who said that? And you realize it was yourself that said that, and you're like, oh God, when did this happen?
Yeah, and I love that. To me, the value there's a beautiful writer and professor. His name is Lawrence Samuel. And he writes about generational diversity and how it has been the fabric of America. I'll do a little exercise. I want you to think about what time in American era I'm talking about. It's the turn of the century. the youngsters are ambitious, they're eager, they want independence, they want to prove themselves, they're interested in going west, and they feel that their parents and the older generations are outdated and they're not keeping up with the current times. What period in American history do you think I'm talking about?
Is that the time when they were wearing bell bottoms?
60s, that'd be the 60s.
You did
Actually,
turn of the century, so it's not the turn of this century or the turn of the previous. I'm going to go for the previous, so the early 1900s.
Ooh.
that's a great guess.
I'm
I like the direction you're going to. Truth is, this was the ends of the 1700s going into the 1800s.
Oh wow!
Ooh.
This was the first generation of children being born into America who were not indigenous to this country.
Okay.
They were the children of the immigrants. And so as early as then, they were like, you guys, you have old-fashioned values. You have that colonial mentality. We want to go west. We want to achieve. We want to become trailblazers. And guess what? They were literally the trailblazers of America. They forged the West. They became the groundbreakers and the change agents of their day. And this generation was called Gen A.
Oh,
that's where it starts from. Okay.
That's where it all begins in America.
Yeah. And I love that we're starting there, because I'm just thinking the old world and the new world, because everybody who came to America before came from the old world. And then all of a sudden, you literally had to have a whole new way of thinking, whole new way of possibility. And this is where, and I think now as well, with the rapid change, with AI, with what's happened with remote work and everything, now more than ever, generational issues are at the forefront, because whenever there's change, that's when you have this generational shift, right?
Yeah, and you also think so. The differences in generations are caused by culture, language, socioeconomic factors, and time, right? So technology is such a huge player here. I think you might have seen a bit of this, EJ, when I was talking at Female Quotient, and that is every generation has been wired differently by technology. And as far back as, I mean, if we're looking at like the silent generation, radio was their first, was their big tech. Then you have baby boomers who had television. And then going to Gen X, you have video games and, internet itself, the computer. Millennials were the emergence of the internet. And then social media defines Gen Z. Going to alpha, I guess your kids are probably alpha age. AI is defining them. As each generation touches and gets influenced by the technology of its day, their brains are changing in different ways. Technology has such a huge role. This is why Gen Z has the attention issues, and also they're getting dopamine hits from getting likes and follows in social media. So they're literally addicted to having that wonderful, happy feeling. This is also why they are the most depressed generation, because depriving them of that means they're not getting their serotonin hits.
This dives into mental fitness for me. EJ, I hope this is where you don't mind me taking there, because
yes.
Like, I'm going to define mental fitness. And mental fitness is like all the stuff that goes on inside. So the inner dialogue, how does that motivate you? Your self-image of yourself, the likes, and are you on social media creating that self-image? The ego, because we all know we have the ego. How do you manage that ego inside? And then the biggest part is the emotional energy that you use. What fills up that emotional energy? And now I never even thought about different generations are going to have different things that fill up their emotional energy. And when you spend that emotional energy, how do you recover? Like, I don't mean just resting. I mean, what do you do to recover emotionally and mentally? And then how do you rejuvenate yourself, which is connecting yourself to your why? And I would love to just hear from you, is like, what's the impact from a generational, when you start thinking about all these different generations that have on mental fitness?
I love the tie into mental fitness and the influence we have with social media, because there's such a huge influence. Mental fitness, and I'll talk about this a bit more, but I will say this: the kids of today have it really tough because their lives are exposed to everybody. When we were kids, it was social pressure, right? There was, from school, from, the community, maybe somebody's, sending photos or talking in school, right? But it was a pretty closed medium. Now everything is available. Any moment, any eye drop, any, comment is just exposed for the world. So these kids have it really, really tough to have everything open. But to me, it boils down to this, and I will define mental fitness this way. The most important relationship you will ever have, the person that you have the most important relationship you will ever have is the one with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it better be good, because if you're not happy in your head, how are you going to be able to portray and share yourself with others? If you don't like, I do this exercise with my clients. Say, I like you 3 times. I like you. I like myself 3 times. I like myself. I like myself.
I like myself.
And now let's take it up a bit. I want you to say, I love myself 3 times.
I love myself.
I love myself.
Usually we'll get stutters and hems and I've even had people break down and cry. It's a hard thing, and we're not taught to embrace the beauty and the God within us. This is, it's not a normal thing. There's some people who, and some religions and some families who do it. But my point I'm getting at is when a kid understands the relationship with himself is the most important thing, and they embrace that. And embracing the good part, I'm amazing at, at doing coffee barista head floats, that's one of my best things. And even the bad side, the dark shadow, as Carl Jung would say, and that means the stuff that I really don't want to share with anybody. Embracing all of that. A kid who is able to do that then is almost impervious to the social pressures because they know who they are.
I love that.
That's so powerful, because that means there's something we can learn from them. I mean, I'd love to get your thoughts on this, Rehka, because it seems as if, and each generation has a different relationship with that sense of self-love and that ability to say those affirmations, right? Like some generations are more in practice of even like that's a thing that you could try and practice on your own. And some are like, I've never had anyone ask me that before. I've never thought to do that. So just using the information, in studying our different generations, what can you share with us?
I think the younger generations, and my goddaughter is a alpha. She's the same age as, she's actually 17. So she is very into, as well as Gen Z, very into social justice, Black Lives Matter, the earth, sustainability, protect the planet. What I hear from a lot of the younger generations is anger at older generations for them to have destroying their beautiful earth. And we are responsible partially, but I'm gonna challenge that, because the 60s were the time where there were protests. This was make love, not war, and protect the earth, and big oil, big, corporations are destroying the way we should be living. So this was being preached in the 60s and 70s. But unfortunately, that generation, boomers and some silent and some Gen X, grew up and had to have jobs.
Yes. For so many, the dream killer, but hopefully we can revamp that and reimagine that to the dream propeller. Yeah.
Exactly. So as they shifted into adult, behavior, that piece of it kind of fell off the radar. So what I love about the younger generations is they're resuscitating. Remember the age of Aquarius was supposed to have been in the 60s, it is a dawning of the, right? Age of Aquarius has been emerging for the past 50 years to me. And I really feel like the Gen Zers and the Alphas are going to be the ones who herald it in, because this is the thing I love about them at work. They will go to a job and they will leave every couple of years. And the message to their employer is, I'm going to come, I'm going to work for you. I'm going to bring my unique talents to you and your position. And I will leave at some point, but I'm going to make this job and this place better because I brought my own uniqueness, my authenticity to you. I love that about this generation.
You'd never hear a Gen X or baby boomer say it. Bring my unique talents to
you. You're welcome.
Well, and then so think about this, because how long, we're that generation that we've worked for so long, where we finally say, wait, what is my dream? What is my superpower? And when can I use it? These kids are asking it right up front.
And I love what you just said is like, for me, mental fitness is self-love. And that thing you said about the relationship with yourself. And I think the generations that we complain about are actually teaching us, I'm Gen X, teaching us about ourselves that we never loved ourselves. That was never taught about love yourself or say you love yourself. It was just, you just get on with it. Like, suck it up, like whatever, do whatever you need to do. And the thing about what you just said, dreaming, what's your superpower? What do you dream about? That never even came into your head. It's just not something you discuss.
And I think what is beautiful about the direction we're going with these younger generations is they're adamant. They don't work. They say, I'm not going to work until I have the job that really defines me, that I get a chance to do what I really want to do. That's breakthrough, completely breakthrough. So I think the way we look at the roles that will be offered to these younger generations, hopefully it's going to be viewed through the lens of, they bring massive technological ability. Their brains are wired so differently because of what they have been exposed to as in this, in their lifetimes. And because of that, I think we are at like the X factor. You know how X-Men says every few generations there's a huge leap.
Yeah. I agree with that, because the way technology is changing, like we're going to have to do something to keep up with what's been demanded of us.
And so maybe we can take older generations like us, the decision makers, the HR managers, the hiring managers of corporations who are older generations, can stop and say, you know what, this is an opportunity. Okay. But how do we create roles? How do we foster this raw talent and actually allow it to succeed and allow it to thrive? And I think finding those superpowers, I do an exercise with my clients and when I do workshops called a superpower finder. Okay. So it basically is taking a look at what you love. On one side, what do you love? What is it that you love? Second part, and this to me is even more important, is what do you do effortlessly? Because when you want to work, you want to be doing something that's super easy, that you love to do, but it's super easy to do. I don't want to be sitting in a room crunching code all day long when I'd rather be in the sunshine and talking to people, right? Yeah. So identifying the way we identify what capacity, what roles are suited for which individual, with for which group. There's going to be this whole technology sector. AI is exploding, but in AI itself, you've got a plethora of different areas we can explore.
Ooh,
wow,
this is fascinating, because the framework you just talked about for helping folks kind of identify their superpowers seems like an exercise that could bridge that gap between the generations, right? Because we know that the Gen Zs are all about that. That's how they're already thinking. That's their focus. And so helping leadership, the decision makers, tune into that side of them and tap into that and learn to channel, their energies with that type of language. I could see that being something that could really help to foster relationship building in the workplace.
Yeah, and I like that you're seeing that opportunity, because to me, we're on the precipice of this really exciting time. The reason I wanted to write my book, and my book is called The OG's Guide to the Multi-Generation Workplace, because I'm calling myself an original gangster.
Well named, apt. I love that.
Thank you. And it's original gangster in the sense that I've seen for decades of technological evolution in the workforce. I started out at 16 stuffing envelopes, and the technology of my day was a typewriter, not even electric.
Oh, that's a throwback.
A throwback, right? And so, going from the 80s to the 90s, where using computers and disk drives, the emergence of email, internet, going into transactional websites, lead generation. I mean, if you look at the massive amount of marketing technology explosion from the 90s onward, it's insane, absolutely insane. And then you go to 2000s with social media. But what I would say is this: marketing principles are always still the same. Okay. It's all about the product or service, that you are selling. How you do it is what is exploding and what is exponentially becoming viable for all these different mediums. So I'll give you an example. In the 80s, 70s and 80s and 90s, there was the Columbia Record Club. Okay. And you have, I wish I had I usually have an image. I'll see if I can pull it up later. You can get 12 albums for a penny if you refer a friend. So you're already a member of this club, but if you refer a friend to the Columbia House Record Club, you get 12 free albums for just 1 penny. Now that was called Member Get a Member. It was all mail order, done through the mail. You get your albums, you send your little penny or your checks through the mail, all mail order. Fast forward to, say, even mid 2005, and you've got Tell Us How We Did, and the Net Promoter Score in particular. Would you refer a friend to this service or product? Guess what? Exact same thing. It has just evolved over the spectrum of this marketing technology evolution.
And that ties in beautifully to the point you made earlier, where it's like we think that these are generational differences. Like, for example, that when you talked about Gen Z focused on social justice and environmental concerns, and then you reminded us that actually in the 60s that was the focus, that was what was in vogue. It does seem as if like this is another great example of like the marketing, the core fundamentals are still at play, but it's just evolving in line with the technology or whatever is the moment of the time that we're in. That's so interesting to me.
But I do want to jump in the 60s. Everyone was doing this, and then all of a sudden what happened? They went and got jobs, and then everything got forgotten. Whereas now I love this thing where the decision makers have this chance to actually ask, what are people's superpowers? Yeah. Let's find out what their superpowers are, and then how can we create jobs to take advantage of all this technology and advantage of the people's superpowers. And that to me is, can you imagine all the people in those big decision makers who actually start to ask that question? What are the superpowers of people?
I love that both of you are saying these things. So I'm just going to say one thing, and I do want to get back to that, the discovery of the superpower element and how we could use it in the workforce. One of the things that I'm pointing out, and the reason why I want to write my book, is not only to point out the differences in the generations. That's not the purpose of the book. The purpose of the book is to talk about the gift of each generation. And to me, the older generations, the silent gen, the boomers who are getting ready to retire, have this one beautiful gift to give back, and that is life experience. And who better to participate and benefit from it than the young guys? Because these older generations, they know how to open a bank account. They know how to save. They know how to do a mortgage. They know how to make peace in the office. They know how to come home and apologize to their wife. Honey, I'm sorry I'm late. They know how to do these things. And even though it might seem antiquated to younger generations, there's nothing for them to disdain, because they have everything to gain from understanding through these older generations. I have a great story for you. Steve Jobs, when he was a kid, a teenager, he wrote to the head of Hewlett Packard, and he says, hey, do you have any spare computer parts you could give me? Guess what? The head of Hewlett Packard sent him spare computer parts and also offered him a summer job. To a teenager, Steve Jobs. And Jobs says, I was in heaven. And you think about the individual gifts that Steve Jobs had then. Nobody would have identified it at the time. And we're getting back to what you were saying here. Who would have even thought the kid who's sitting in his, his parents' garage and cobbling together little techie equipment, nobody would even think, wow, that's a really cool thing, and one day you're going to change the world.
Yeah.
But it was his superpower.
Wow.
That's beautiful. It's a good reminder too.
And so the mentorship element is so beautiful to me, because having generations, silent, boomer, X, who understand, look, so there has to be a handshake. There has to be a handshake between the generations here. The older ones who say, yeah, I have all these cool things that I can teach you, but you have to accept that I know some things that you can learn.
But with mentorship is like, everyone always thinks it's the older one teaching, but the older generation have to accept that there's so much of this technology they don't understand. So they have to be willing to learn as well. So it's like, for me, it's always a two-way thing. So it's like when I look at my mum is staying with us and she still can't work out the remote control. It always baffles me. Whereas my son or my daughter, who's even 18 months, she can work out the remote control. Yep. So it's like, I always feel like maybe if my mom starts to negotiate with the younger ones, they have something to teach each other, because the way my daughter can't even, she's barely talking, but she can work out remote control. I don't even understand that. Whereas my mother, who went to Harvard, lawyer, cannot work out how to use a remote control. Each have something to teach each other. I think that's where they need to come from, that point.
Yeah, that's absolutely 100% right. The reverse mentoring aspect of it. So again, this is why we have a handshake. Listen, I think you're incredible. I think you know things that I couldn't even dream of. Older generations also have this thing called fear of technology, fear of breaking technology, yeah. Right? I did a talk to a board, older, traditionalist and baby boomer, a federation of Jewish women. And they were like, we don't understand how these younger generations think or talk or what they do. So I was trying to demystify how they do what they do. And the one thing that came from that is there is a fear of breaking technology with older generations. So maybe this is what your mom is thinking, like, if I push the wrong button, I'm going to break it forever.
Yeah.
That's so fascinating, because our son breaks things on purpose. Like, it's almost as if the Gen Z and the Gen Alpha, they've somehow either been taught or learned that breaking is how you master.
Yeah.
Right?
That's brilliant.
You take it apart, you dismantle it, and then you can understand it. That's how they learn.
That is brilliant. And so, I know I'm mortified at the thought of, okay, I'll change the batteries. Fine. But there is a fear. It's like, well, I'm not taking that thing apart. No way. I love that, EJ. Such a landmark concept that breaking things helps them understand how they actually work.
Yeah.
Maybe the next time you go.
So comfortable. He's so comfortable with things.
Oh.
He doesn't even think it's a big thing to break. He just thinks this thing keeps switching this thing off. How does it work? Whereas when I was growing up, the TV was like, oh my God. So you wouldn't want to break it. There was only one in the house, and you wouldn't want your dad to come and find out that you were the one who broke it. So there was obviously this bit larger than life thing of like, let's not mess with it. Let's not try and understand it.
I was going to say, Rehka, just on the back of that, maybe the next time you meet with that same group, you can bring a bunch of tech they can break on purpose.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and then, this is how you take apart blah, blah, blah. And this is how you put it back together.
Yeah. So then that way that's demystified, and they're not going to, but it's what I love about this. It's all of these concerns they're so on that, like, they're so deeply ingrained in us, right? They're like, there's just that, they're intuitive. They're part of how we see the world and how we live and how we speak and think. And it's fascinating that the work you do helps to kind of bring that to the surface a little bit, and then broker some meaningful conversations around some of these things so that we can just start to see each other more fully. I really love that about your work.
Oh, thank you. And, as both of you are talking about this technology, it occurs to me that one place where reverse mentoring is prevalent and obvious and actually part of a business model is the Apple Genius. When you walk into an Apple store and you can talk to a genius, they're kids. Yeah. They've got dongles hanging off of them, and you take your phone in and they're like, oh, here, blah, 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 done. So this is exactly what we're talking about. It's a brilliant model. I love it. I absolutely love it. But it's hopefully what we can do is throw a spotlight on this working model and say, listen, companies can learn from this.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Definitely with AI, I think this is the way where people are struggling how to bring AI into work and how is it going to be effective. And I'm sure the younger generation, for them, it's like almost like the Apple Genius, or you can do this, I can make it write a movie. And I think the decision makers need to start coming in and say, okay, we've just created this new AI. What should we actually use it for? And then there's this share of reverse mentoring of information of where AI is going to take us next.
Yeah, I have a slightly mixed and conflicting thoughts on the AI front, because I do think it is going to change the world. There's a fantastic book called The Next Wave by Mustafa Suleyman, and he's the one who actually created OpenMind, the AI that was bought out by Google. And he's been doing this for a decade and change, and warning, because he was part of the team that actually created and knows what it's capable of doing.
Okay.
And there was a committee that met last year to go to Congress and say, listen, we have to put restrictions in AI. It could, we could go down the Terminator route and kill all of humanity. And it's true. It's very, very true. And they likened AI to the proliferation of nuclear weapons in the 60s, the Cold War. Literally, they said what the world did in accordance with every country is they decided we are not going to give the power to create nuclear weapons to any more countries. We're going to put a block on who can use it and then who's going to go ahead and create it. This was across the world, the globe. They decided to, because they realized the potential to actually destroy the entire planet was that had the potential. I think the emergence of AI is exactly the same place. We can use it for beautiful things like curing cancer and, hey, let's get climate change under control. But there are other players who are not interested. And this is what concerns me is businesses are so thrilled about, wow, we can automate, marketing technology. We can do so many powerful things using AI. But I think the use of it without having some some controls is dangerous.
Wow.
Hmm.
What you've just said has hit me to my core. And, because I always feel like there's yin and yang. And every time when there's new things come in, everyone just talks about the good side. And it's like, you can do this, you can do that. But what's I forget what is yang. I'm going to assume yin is good. What's the yang side you're not paying attention to? And
Yin is female, yang is male.
okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think any of them is bad. It's just different energies. I think one is more calm and one is more fiery.
Yes, there we go.
But you have to, okay, so I love that. So it's not good or bad, but it's like, are we having it in balance? Because I remember watching Terminator a long time ago, and it's actually very scary that whoever wrote Terminator, we need to go back and find that man. And like, how is it that you're looking? Because a lot of the stuff they're saying is like slowly AI, machine learning, all that stuff is coming. And I think I don't want to start sounding like a doomsday, like the world is I'm not saying that's going to happen, but we need to actually heed the warning of like, what's the controls that were being put in place? Because otherwise, when it's too late, it's hard to try and pull it back when it's already happened. And I think your warning is kind of apt now, that we need to start thinking, what are the controls that are being put in place?
So I have a gift for you then. James Cameron is the creator and director and writer of Terminator. And my husband and I listened to a podcast of him talking about AI. So if you do a search on James Cameron AI, hopefully you'll be able to find it.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, I have to listen to that for sure.
In technology, look, every technology has its pros and cons. And as we saw with social media, we didn't step in to put restrictions and guidelines around the kids.
I was just about to say, that was what's in my head as well. Is it on Netflix, The Social Contract? And when they were creating your avatars and the way that just to keep you glued, it was quite sad that all the people who created it, they didn't think about at the time, what is this going to have, the impact it's going to have on the kids. And one of the creators, he's on the program where now he's like, if I'd known, but at the time he was one of the push this forward, let's get it. And all of this, obviously you can see him being interviewed in the future when he actually has kids. And now you're like, now if you'd known back then, and I wish that you don't make that same mistake now with AI.
Hindsight's always, I mean, to your good point, I just wonder, because on the one hand, I don't want, like, now is when we get to explore the possibilities. But part of exploring the possibilities is accessibility, right? Like broadening who can play with it, who can have access to it. What do they create as a result of that exchange? And the conversations around that, right? Bringing like minds, like we started the conversation today about the power of bringing like minds together, and how that collective intentionality can really push things forward. What I hope for this topic is that we have people who are really curious, who are really engaged, but also have a sense of personal responsibility, that can, as a group, explore this new tool and frame up like what could be the boundaries for this. I just hope they don't clamp down on it and take it away preemptively.
So EJ, what's interesting is the ones who have the most knowledge of this new technology are the younger generations. It's millennials and probably some Gen Xers and some Gen Zs. There's a fantastic resource called the Center for Humane Technology. Tristan Harris runs a podcast where he talks about the dangers, and he and his partner sit in on a congressional committee, and they advise Congress saying, listen, here's where you want to pay attention to legislation, or here's where you want to start putting in restrictions and limitations to AI because of X, Y, and Z. The younger generation is advising older Congress. So, we're seeing it right there. Unfortunately, Congress, like some decision makers in big business who are probably older, are more interested in the revenue generating machine than they are in the implications of the negativity.
Yeah, I can see that.
But that's what's worrying, where we need to change the old way of doing things, where we just look at the revenue and actually let's let's look at the human impact and do that quickly, because the way AI, the speed it's going at, if we don't actually change that, we could be in a bad place.
And as you're pointing out, this is where the younger generations have a far more impressive foothold. They're like, no, you guys can't keep doing this to the earth. And if we keep allowing corporations and, the old guard to keep continuing, as we're watching it happen, right? So there is a lot of value and a lot of power in what this generation is saying to us. I think, though, incorporating it in a way that's not, oh, look at the kids and look how cute they want to be. That's not the way to frame it.
Yeah.
You've changed my mind already, because I think we were talking about this earlier, where everyone used to always complain about the younger generation. They don't want to work hard. They're too this, they're too that. And then it just dawned on me. I was having a conversation recently with someone in the younger generation, and it's just that they're more true to themselves. They love themselves and they want to be more authentic. So they don't swallow a lot of stuff that we used to swallow. And I think we're actually going away from this. I want people to start actually realizing we have a lot to learn from them instead of complaining about them.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that you're saying that, the accepting that piece, the gift that they're bringing. But don't get me wrong, they do need to develop skills to work in the workforce.
Rehka, I'm glad you said it, because
I also wanted to just caveat that people do need to work. Like I remember hearing someone in the younger generation, they had to work past 5 o'clock. And I mean, they just worked till like 10 past 5, and they wanted to get mental health support for that. And I was like, I didn't know what to say. I was like, you only worked 10 minutes past 5 o'clock.
That's too much. That's the thing that and it's one of those where you're like, you don't want to say, because you want to encourage and you see the positives of it, but it's the extremes of it that I think I find, what's the word that a lot of folks in that generation use? Triggering. That's what, for me, I find a hard time with. And Rehka, you and I, we'd spoken about this previously, of in the workplace, as a team manager or people leader, and you're now working with 4 generations, right? Or in some cases, even more, maybe 5. Rehka, you have that experience, right? You were in a leadership position and you had 5 generations represented across your team. Yeah. So if there was 1 or 2 things that you could share with yourself then, knowing what you know now, what would those be? Like leading a team with that many generations on it.
Ooh, that's a good question. A really good question. The one thing I would say to my younger self is, don't be afraid to ask for more. Ooh. Go ahead and talk to your manager and say, listen, first of all, I'm a woman of color. And then, being able to showboat or talk about something that I did positively is not something that we really do. But what I would say to, my younger self is, go and have conversations. Again, this is leveraging the relationship, the ability for a senior manager to mentor you. Go to them and say, look, my trajectory is I want to be a board member one day. I really want that trajectory of where I can constantly improve my career or achieve this milestone financially or this title. And I'm not sure exactly how to do it, because right now all I am is an assistant. So how is it that I can plan a path? Can you show me what it would take for me to get to the next position to become a manager? That kind of conversation, even for our generation, my generation, but also especially now, you don't see this level of interaction with the younger generations. You might see a level of entitlement. But the thing is, the workplace there are rules, there are steps. We can't break it all at once. And I don't think that we want to. And this is where the younger generations can benefit. It's like, Can you show me what it's going to take? For example, the area that they are most lacking is communication.
Yes.
Because they're used to this, you know, and they're used to emojis and to images and little videos, and that's perfect for communicating. Memes, which are about culture, incorporated into all of this. But in the workforce, you have to know how to ask for, we need to change this meeting. How, you know, how do I do these skills that are maybe even communication, but also office etiquette, right? Just understanding and mastering that there's a way you create a meeting, or you change a meeting, or that you ask for, you know, can I have extra time, or whatever it is. Having a conversation where you're able to say something or ask for something, and then benefit from your management and you coming together and making a decision, as opposed to polarization, which is what the media loves to show everybody doing. We don't have to suck that up. We don't have to consume that. And that, to me, is a big place where we, as owners of technology, can say, I don't need to listen to the crap that's being served up to me. I want to be the owner and consume the kind of content or the kind of messages I want.
That's really powerful, because I think that in the workplace, yeah, you're right. It seems as if there is this gap in some of those skills, like that type of communication, right? That read of the political, the political landscape, and that etiquette in the office. And so it's fascinating to hear you kind of talk about that being yet another opportunity to have that, what do you call it, handshake across generations, right? And sort of lean in both sides towards like a common goal.
I taught a workshop at Montclair State University recently, and it was to a group of graduate students. They were master's and PhD students, and I taught this very thing. It was leadership. You know, how do I create a career in leadership and achieve my goals? And then what are the skills I need to actually master in order to become that role? And the students were so interested in my responses. They came up to me and they were like, you know what, nobody actually ever spoke to me or gave me this information this way. It doesn't have to be talking down. It can be talking about, look, here's the fastest way for you to become a VP, or here's the fastest way for you to become a CTO, whatever the goal is. There's a trajectory, there's a path, and you can make it hard, or you can benefit from people who are here and who really want to give back their life experience and help you succeed in your career.
Ooh, I love that. Speaking of topics to kind of explore from the different generations, this is one that came up. Chinazam and I were talking about this the other day, and we said, oh, we've got to raise this to Rehka. We've got to get you to weigh in on this never-ending debate on remote work and how the different generations are viewing this challenge / opportunity. What are you hearing?
So I'll share some personal background with that. During 9/11, actually it was the first bomb that went off in 1993. I was working at the World Financial Center, so I was there. 9/11, I was Midtown, but these offices were closed for a long time, for a very long time. Wall Street was closed. What it forced the US to do was to take their servers, to take very powerful and valuable information in their servers and move them to different locations in the United States, right? Dallas, so they started planning for that back then. And it also meant that people, you weren't going into the office. Maybe it was a smaller office or a satellite office that you were working from. This is for 20 years. This has already been in process of happening. And then you fast forward to, to COVID. And I was lucky because our agency was already working remote. We'd have an office location we'd go to a couple times a week, but we were all remote and we were all over the United States. Now I'm old school where I worked on Wall Street. I was commuting for almost 23 years, going into the office, taking the train to the bus, to the subway, and so forth. And I got laid off from AIG in 2012. And my husband said to me, how about you not commute to the city anymore? How about you get a job that's outside of the city? So I've done the commute work, I've done the commute route, and I've also done the remote route. And to me, it is totally possible. There are things, though, that come with an office collaborative space that you can't do alone. Mm-hmm. And that is brainstorming, having ideas, doing meetings one-to-one, face-to-face. The one thing you cannot get across is energetic expression. It's like, sort of, but having, and then the thing is, you're going to love this from the athletic point of view. When you have an energy that is percolating, and then a group of people kind of build it, and it becomes a fireball, that room becomes explosive, and you can achieve and break any code or just, whatever problem you have. That, to me, cannot be touched by virtual connection. So for that purpose, I love having in-office meetings. And I think a lot of older decision makers, C-suite, they're like, but we've always done it this way. I've always done it this way. Yeah. Quite frankly, Elon Musk is a proponent of in-office. He wants people in office because of that very collaborative energy. He wants people to brainstorm together and to, as he said, blow up things, right? That's his MO. So I think it can be done. It has been done. But I think with a caveat that you do have time or designated times and points when you meet as a team.
Yeah.
That's a great answer. I think we had a previous conversation with somebody where it blew our minds about this collaboration and this brainstorming that you just can't get remotely. Yeah. However, we both work remotely. So we're like, there's got to be an intentional way of bringing the best of both worlds, because we can't pretend that during the pandemic, working remote did work. And the technology that we have now, especially with AI, where you can actually have people in person and then people remotely, and you're still able to collaborate. So I feel like we can't just go back to the old way and say, oh, this is the way we've done it. There's got to be a new happy medium of intentionally we come in to collaborate as a team for this period, and we brainstorm, and then we give our people the opportunity to also work remote. So there's some flexibility. That's where I'm leaning towards at the moment.
I completely agree with you. And I think also, during COVID, I changed my title from Chief Operating Officer to Chief Optimism Officer. Because, I saw that our team needed to have something fun and to believe in, something, optimistic. And what we would do one day every week is Thursdays, we'd have a happy hour, towards the end of the day. And I would do a top 10 countdown. Top 10 things that have improved during COVID was the first one. And we did, and it was incredible, because carving out the time for commuting means you're sleeping in longer. You're having more time with the family, with the children. One of the things that improved was that people were cooking dinner together. Cooking, and people would send me photos of the things they were making together as a family. The kids were just, consuming this time with the parents and the family. And it really made us stop and take a breath and celebrate and embrace what family and what having your personal time really meant. So I totally agree with you. I think the the benefits of being able to work remotely. Time is on your side. You don't have to commute. Oh, the number one thing that improved during COVID to my team was sleep.
Yes.
Which is a superpower. If you want to improve your superpower, you need sleep for sure.
That is definitely key to mental fitness. I have to say, those sleepless nights are not helpful. But it's fascinating because I even remember a colleague of mine saying, now I can go for a run and then literally just still be in my exercise clothes and log in for our 9 a.m. meeting. And so, it was that just being able to take advantage of those small pockets of time. She had health scares before. And so this was really the first time that she was able to maintain that level of like wellness that she'd always desired, but could just never fit into her routines. So it's so interesting. But I also see the power of the collaborative work together as a collective. So it's just going to be fascinating to see how those different drivers weigh out as folks decide which direction they're going to go in. And the one thing I think we did recently hear was that the Gen Zs want to be in the office. Is that what you're hearing? Because I was shocked when I heard someone say that they were craving, because many of them are a bit lonely, I guess, from like a work that, they're not able to make the same kinds of relationships in the work environment that maybe previous generations could, because we were co-located, we were coming in. So they never had that experience. And they're also craving that structure and being in that environment.
Learning from what, just observing other people, learning by osmosis, where you just, when you see other people, you just pick things up.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. I need to look into that. But I'm not surprised, because Gen Z technically, even though they're digital natives, prefer face-to-face, one-on-one communication.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I had that wrong. I thought they didn't like face-to-face because they thought it was confrontational. Because I have a thing with EJ so when you're doing a Zoom call with many people just switch off the camera, and it always bugs me. I'm like, why would you just not put your face on? And then I realized my wife does it, and I thought those people wouldn't want that face-to-face. I don't know about you. Don't you think it's a bit disconcerting when you're having a call and you just have all these blank screens, and like, I don't know whether they're even listening.
I think they're multitasking, number one.
Yes.
but the thing is, if you're doing a one-on-one, obviously you're going to be on screen and having, this face-to-face conversation. But I guess when you have 50 people, they feel like, okay, I can put my avatar up and it will represent me. But literally with the Gen Z, they do. I think it is a bit of a paradox, right? Because they won't pick up the phone. God forbid they'll answer the phone, but they prefer face-to-face, communication. The thing also with Gen Z is they respond best to feedback when it's immediate. So right after they do a presentation or create an infographic or give you a data dump and so forth, immediately respond back and say, thank you so much. That was rock star. I love it. And I want you to share this in our team meeting next week, that kind of thing. That's the kind of reinforcement that just, rejuvenates them and makes them want to participate even more.
Oh, that's a really good tip. I wish I'd had that little nugget when I was in my last people leadership role. That would have saved me a lot of heartache. I could tell you that much. Thank you for sharing that. Are you going to do a playbook? Is that what your OG, the OG guide, is that going to be a playbook for leaders on how to like some of those strategies, like the one you just shared about feedback, immediate feedback for Gen Z? Is that?
Yep. Yeah, there's a piece of it called Communicating with Every Generation. And I kind of have, you're right, it is a playbook. It's kind of like a cheat sheet for communicating with each generation.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh my goodness.
Well, Rehka, thank you so much for giving your time. This has been really, really insightful. I'm sure a lot of people, the generational knowledge, I know I speak for myself, I was not aware of this before this conversation. At the end of our conversation, we always like to say, what's one thing you want to share with the world to help with their mental fitness?
Yeah, so I would say the one thing I would share is, if the voice in your head is being mean to you, go and do the work.
Wow.
Do the work. Find out why. Confront those demons. Just understand what it is, because you need to be super, super happy inside your head.
Mhm.
As a leader, as an athlete,
Yeah.
as a professional, and as a, for me, understanding and doing that improvement on yourself on an ongoing basis improves yourself athletically in a fitness way. As a leader, I say it'll improve you from the boardroom all the way to the bedroom.
Definitely.
That's
Wow.
powerful. Yeah, that's the most powerful last message I've heard.
That was amazing.
Wow. Thank you, Rekha.
My pleasure.
What is so we're going to put links to your website. We're obviously going to put links to the book. Is there anything else that you really want to leave with our listeners that you want to promote?
I'm going to be shooting a series of videos coming up that kind of talk about me as a speaker, me as a consultant advisor to C-suite boardrooms, and a little bit about my book as well. So that will be coming out probably in mid-early June. And I would love to share that with you guys as well.
Oh, that would be a pleasure. Rehka, this was so awesome. I think this conversation is one that's so critical, and it's just the start of many conversations. So thank you for sharing your gifts with us.
My absolute pleasure. And I will respond by sharing the information about the AI in an email to both of you guys.
Okay. Thank you so much, Rekha.
Thank you.
Amazing. Right.
Thank you so much.
And that brings us to the end of another insightful episode of Real Talk. We hope you've enjoyed today's discussion and have gained valuable insights into enhancing your mental well-being and productivity. Now, before we wrap things up, we have an exciting opportunity for you. Are you curious about your mental fitness score? Want to know how you can improve your overall well-being and boost your productivity? Well, we have just the thing for you. Head over to our show notes, where you will find a link to our exclusive mental fitness quiz. It's a quick and easy assessment that will provide you with a personalized score and actionable steps to enhance your general well-being and productivity. It's like having a personal coach in your pocket. And don't forget to subscribe to Real Talk on your favorite podcast platform. By subscribing, you'll be the first to know when we release new episodes filled with valuable discussions, expert interviews, and practical tips for leading a fulfilling life. You can also connect with me, Chinazom, on social media. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook for daily inspirations, updates on upcoming episodes, and behind-the-scenes peeks into the Real Talk community. Remember, your mental well-being matters, and taking small steps towards improvement can make a significant difference in your life. We're here to support you on your journey. Thank you for tuning in today, and a special thank you to all our listeners who have joined us on this incredible podcasting adventure. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, keep striving for a better version of yourself. Take care and stay mentally fit.